Hey everyone, welcome to the first episode of NU Takes. My name is Michael Barthelemy.
And I'm Didi, and we're here to give our own hot takes and spicy opinions about all things Northwestern sports. We're here to kick things off today by talking about the current state of Northwestern men's basketball.
Since the end of the season, Northwestern has seen junior forward Miller Kopp and redshirt junior guard Anthony Gaines enter the transfer portal. Both players were integral parts of Northwestern's rotation. So what kind of impact do you think these potential losses have on the team going forward?
Honestly, I really don't think that they make that big of an impact on the team. Obviously it's never good when players transfer, especially ones that have been with the team for a while. But, I think that while Kopp has been called a superstar for the team at times, he's really not all that. I mean, he's a great player. He brings a lot to the team. But, at the end of the day, I think the best that he can do is be a dynamic spot up shooter. I mean, if you look at what he brings on the court, in 3 years in Evanston, he's not really a dynamic threat on offense, and he's not particularly good on defense either. His shooting percentages this year went down. I mean, he shot 32% from three, which is nearly like an 8% decrease from the year before. And I really think his transferring is more about kind of his recognition of his own limitations as opposed to, frustrations potentially with Chris Collins. And I think that given his size and his potential as a shooter, I mean, it seems like he has aspirations to play at a high level professionally. And I don't think it's an attack on Collins that Northwestern does not seem to be the best place for him to do that. And then for Gaines, I think he's just looking for a bigger role. He had a pretty limited role on this team last year. And I don't really see, him getting too exponentially better, but I think that he could definitely start and thrive in a solid mid-major program.
Now, I know that Miller Kopp averaged the 11 points per game. That's not superstar numbers. We get that. Shot under 40% from the field. We get that. But when this man is on, this man is on. And the same thing with he has the potential to drop 20 any sort of night just because of his shooting ability. And for Chris Collins to lose a guy like that, and to lose a guy like Anthony Gaines, who sure he's only averaging 4 points, 4 rebounds, not numbers that are going to jump off the page, but he's a very valuable glue guy, very valuable guy for defense. And to lose him, those guys are sneaky 2 big losses for Chris Collins. And it's kind of just a big sign to say that players are leaving Northwestern because they simply do not want to play for Chris Collins. I get transfer portal has kind of taken it's a new wave to go into the transfer portal. But for these players who are key pieces to say, yeah, we get that Northwestern is supposed to be good in the next couple of years because everyone's coming back. We're going to just run it back again. They're like, no, we're not going to run it back because Chris Collins has a lack of commitment for winning. So Kopp and Gaines, these are good players. They'd be able to contribute with good teams. They'd be able to be rotation pieces for pretty solid teams, in my opinion. So when they transfer to whatever team they lose, they end up at, it's going to be huge losses for Northwestern. And it's kind of just demoralizing to see these guys that aren't I think the big thing is these guys aren't superstars. We know they're not superstars. If it was let's throw this name out there, a Pat Baldwin Jr., and he was transferring from Northwestern, I would get it. He's a superstar, and Northwestern is not a great program historically. But to lose a guy like Kopp and a guy like Gaines, who fit in Evanston in terms of talent level, and to lose them because they say, we're too good for Northwestern, we're not succeeding in Northwestern because Chris Collins doesn't have a commitment to winning, is kind of pathetic.
I think those are blatant over-exaggerations. I think, okay, again, obviously Gaines and Kopp, they've been at Evanston for 3 years now, Gaines for 4. They have not done enough to change the dynamic of the team. I don't think, whether or not Chris Collins, has that winning mentality, that's a different story. But I think that Kopp and Gaines, sure, they're rotational players. They're key rotational players, but they're never going to get Northwestern to the level that we need to be at. This year, sure, Kopp can shoot the lights out of the ball. But what did we see this year in conference play? Never once did he take over a game. We saw Boo Buie take over games. Sure, he was inconsistent. We saw Chase Adij take over games. But Kopp is a spot-up shooter, and unfortunately, I think that he could potentially be holding back the team. I think that there's such a reliance to get him the ball every single game. I think that everyone's like, oh, you need to get the ball in Miller Kopp's hands. You need to get the ball in Miller Kopp's hands. He can't really do much with the ball. He's a spot up guy. And at the end of the day, at his best basketball, that's all he's going to be.
You're saying he's a hindrance on the team?
Okay, maybe not a hindrance necessarily, but I think that without him, things could potentially open up. I think it could be a blessing in disguise. I think we could see the emergence of a player like Robbie Barron, who's had limited minutes and, not really a lot of opportunities to emerge as a potential breakout star next season. I think that Robbie Barron's got a lot of potential, but with someone like Miller Kopp, who plays a similar role, I think that Robbie Barron has more potential on defense. I think he could be as good of a shooter, and I think that he could be kind of a dynamic threat in offense that Miller Kopp has just never been in Evanston.
Chris Collins, the thing with him is that which is keeping him to stick around, even though he's let's be honest, stunk since 2017. To have him stay is because he gets decent recruits. He gets like decent players, but for these players to now get up and leave, what's the point of Chris Collins anymore?
I think the point of Chris Collins is, okay, not that he's the best coach on the planet, but the point of Chris Collins is to bring in recruits, to bring hope to Evanston. Again, it's been a dark 3 years. It's been a dark 3 years. It's been a dark 3 years. I understand that. But I think that next year is key in terms of judging Chris Collins' ability as a basketball coach. Yes, he's not been that good, but he's also been unlucky. He's dealt with injuries to his players. He's dealt with his point guard of the future after Bryant McIntosh, being unable to come to Northwestern. I think that next year, it's going to be I think next year is the potential turning point for Northwestern. If we can see Ty Berry, if we can see the 3 incoming freshmen make significant progress and make a significant impact on the team, I think it's just too early to count out Chris Collins. I know he's been here for a long time. I know that the past few years have been tough. But I think that he's been a little unlucky.
How late is too early? This man has been here.
I think he's been
for like a decade.
I think he's been a little unlucky. Yes, of course, his seat is hot right now, as it should be. But I think that the real test is not this year. It's not last year. It's next season, because next season he'll have his guys.
No, he won't. They're leaving. Recruits. He's losing his guys.
I think he'll have key pieces. I think that he'll have Boo Booey, he'll have Pete Nance, he'll have Ryan Young, he'll have Robbie Barron, all highly recruited guys who have a lot of potential. And I know it's been potential for the last 3 years, but I think that next year could potentially be the season.
I'm going to be honest. I'm sick of talking about potential. I want to see results, and Collins just hasn't given me results. He hasn't been able to adapt to the modern game at all. The Northwestern runs this super slow offense, which does not fit their playing style. Boo Booey is too dynamic of a point guard to be contained in this half-court offense that Chris Collins loves to run. I want to see Northwestern open up the floor, looking like granted, they have more talent, but an Alabama type of mold. I want to see them run fast. I want to see these guys run. But Chris Collins has yet to adapt to that. And he's too often getting praised for bringing Northwestern to March Madness. Sure, he did it. Sure, that's the greatest season Northwestern's ever had. Sure, that might make him the best coach in Northwestern history. But since then, what has he done? Like, if he's not getting results now, these past 2 years have been so abysmal that he should be gone already. I don't know why he isn't. I think it has to do with the fact that there is no AD at Northwestern. I think you're right about this season is his make or break season, because I thought last season should have been it, but apparently not. Apparently he's sticking around for another year. So if he has another season of similar results as to the last 2, he's for sure a goner, because it's been a long time coming in my eyes.
The NFL draft is only weeks away, and Northwestern has a plethora of players who could be taken this year, including Northwestern's star offensive tackle, Rashawn Slater, who is widely considered one of the best linemen in the draft. Mock drafts currently seem to be split on whether or not he or Oregon's Penei Sewell will be the first O-lineman taken off the board. So in your eyes, who do you think should be the first tackle taken, and who do you think will have a better career?
Well, I think it's kind of tough to evaluate Slater in terms of being a tackle, just seeing that in the long term, just compared to Sewell, just because first off, Slater hasn't played in a year. It's tough to evaluate him or compare him. But outside of that, positioning wise, the big problem with Slater has been with his length. I mean, his arms just aren't that long compared to what you typically want out of a tackle. Sure, he's a fantastic blocker. We've seen that in his career at Northwestern. in his tenure starting, his long tenure starting. I mean, everyone loves that Chase Young footage, and for a good reason, dude. Kind of just like put a halt to Chase Young, which is something to say. 2019, only 5 QB pressures. So we understand that he can block with the best of them. It's just a matter of will he be more of a guard in the long term, or will he be a tackle his entire career? I think it's difficult to say that Slater will be the first tackle taken. I'd say Sewell would be the first tackle taken, just because I think it gives him a big leg up that he played in 2020. So there's more recent game footage. Of course, Slater was training for the draft all year long, so you could make the argument that, oh, well, now his body's in peak condition, but he hasn't taken real game reps in over a year, which has got to be like a slight red flag for teams. To see like, yeah, he produced in 2019, but is he still at that peak level? I think Sewell will be the first one taken as a result of that, and because of his just highlight playability.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you. I think that Sewell, I think he's kind of the highlight prospect, and I think for good reason. I think that his ceiling is really, through the roof. A lot of, some people are calling him a generational talent, and I think looking at his combination of size and speed and just like what he's been able to do, in his time at Oregon, I think it's really almost not unprecedented, but I think it's particularly impressive. Not to say that, Slater hasn't done, a lot of things at Northwestern that kind of rival those kind of accomplishments. But I think that Sewell's just got the higher ceiling. But I do think that Slater has, a higher floor. I think that Slater, he's not the most flashy prospect by any means, right? He doesn't necessarily have the height to play tackle, and he doesn't necessarily have the length, that it's traditionally considered, oh, you need this sort of length to play that position. But I think that Slater really, he brings a lot of stability to the position, consistency, kind of like you mentioned. And, I think that, whatever teams pick the both of them, I think that both teams are going to be happy in the long run, and that both of them are going to have successful NFL careers.
And so who do you think is the best fit for Slater?
I think a lot of mocks have him going to the Giants at 11, after Sewell gets taken earlier. But I think that, the Dolphins could take Slater at a sneaky pick at 6. The Dolphins traded back. I think that, they have a clear need to potentially bolster their offensive line. I think that they might be afraid that Sewell is going to get taken early. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of great prospects potentially on the board at 6. But, I wouldn't be surprised if Slater goes earlier than 11, if he goes before Sewell even. It really just depends on, what teams are thinking at what particular moment.
So are you implying there that you think Sewell will be taken by the Bengals? Because in the eyes of many, like the top 4 picks will probably be quarterbacks.
Yeah, I think that Sewell could definitely potentially be taken by the Bengals. I think that, there's just having that, moving a 6 but not further back that's kind of insurance almost, but like not playing it too safe, where it's like, there's realistically no chance that there's going to be both Sewell and Slater taken, before the 6th pick. And I think that the Dolphins, if even if Sewell hasn't been picked by them, I think they could potentially take Slater beforehand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you mentioned it before, but I do like the Giants as a fit for Slater. There's a reason why he's being chalked up that way in a lot of mock drafts. It's because, sure, the Giants took Andrew Thomas last year at 4, but he hasn't had a great rookie campaign. He hasn't shown that he is a long-term superstar stud tackle. They might still need to invest a little more in the O-line. They want to. They saw what their rivals were doing in Dallas a few years back and how that led to success with a huge O-line. So they might go Slater at 11. I like him there. I think he'll be a great blindside tackle for Daniel Jones to try to open it up, because the big problem with Daniel Jones has been turnovers. A great way to limit turnovers is to have more time in the pocket, more time to evaluate your options. But with a sneaky pick, I wouldn't be shocked if the Cardinals trade up to a spot where they could take Slater. They have all the offensive tools. They have Chase Edmonds at running back. They got the receivers in D-Hop. They got Christian Kirk and Larry Fitz. They have Kyler Murray. They just need to make sure that they have a solid O-line, really, because then they have the complete offense. Cliff Kingsbury might have a complete offense if they get Rashawn Slater, because the biggest thing for Kyler Murray is to make sure that he has all the time in the world, because being a smaller guy, you don't want him getting hit a bunch. The best way to do that is to get your blindside tackle, which would be Slater. He would fit in perfectly. It would bolster their O-line tremendously. And I wouldn't be surprised with a team like the Cardinals, who have a solid defense right now, in my eyes, if they go with Slater early, because they want him as their guy. Looking at the other first round buzz prospects that Northwestern has, Greg Newsome II has shot up draft boards this offseason and now projects to be a first round pick by many mock drafts. He's one of 4 cornerbacks that are receiving a majority of first round hype, among Alabama's Patrick Surtain II, South Carolina's J.C. Horn, and Virginia Tech's Caleb Farley. So in your eyes, where does Newsome stack up in this list?
Call me biased, but I think that Newsome, stands out as the best corner among those 4. I think that, based on the eye test, all 4 of them are supremely talented, right? They're all great at man-to-man coverage. They've got great hands, great speed, great size. But I think if you look at the numbers and you look at the level of competition that they've had to face, I think that Newsome, clearly it was the best on paper. Sure, I can understand potential injury concerns, right? Newsome has, faced a little bit of that so far in his career in college, but he has, out of those 4, he's allowed the least yards per snap, the least yards per target, and the lowest passer rating, of all 4 of those players. And that's all while playing, in the Big Ten, and that's against just, playmakers, wide receivers like Rondale Moore, Chris Olave, the list goes on. So I think that, again, all 4 really, they've all got really, really, really great tangibles, good reach, closing speed, they can tackle. But I think just if you look at on paper what each of the corners have been able to do, I think that Newsome has shown the most consistency and the highest level of play of all 4 of them.
Okay, I assume this would be a hot take, but I have to agree with you that I don't think he's going to be. This is where the Northwestern bias is really showing, but I don't think he's going to be the first cornerback taken. I think Surtain will be by far the earliest taken. But I think in the long run, we're going to look back and say Newsome was the best corner in this draft. He reminds me a lot of Jair Alexander, just based on the way that he just shuts down one half of the field. He may not get the high turnover numbers, but he's able to create an island on the one half of the field, and that's really what you want in a number 1 corner at the end of the day. He had the lowest completion percentage allowed in single coverage at 10.5%. That's via Pro Football Focus. And I mean, he's shown at Northwestern, which is a primarily zone scheme, he has shown that he can excel in that system, just based on the numbers that we've seen and the reason why he's getting all this first round hype. But the question is, can he adjust to a scheme that relies more on man coverage? I think he has the tangibles to do that. I mean, we saw the 4.38 speed. Sure, everyone's running a 4.4 nowadays, but with these pro days. But I think Newsome showed in the season that he's got 4.4 speed. So I think between that and his ability, the numbers that he's shown in single coverage, in isolation situations, and man press situations, that he has a lot of room for improvement in man coverage. He's got a lot of potential to improve there, but he's already has pretty solid fundamentals and tools for man coverage. I think he can excel if he gets into the right scheme. And I think he might, right out the gate, he may not be a stud corner, but I think in a few years he will be able to develop into one of the lockdown corners in the league.
And, given all this information, what team, do you think is the best fit for a guy like Newsome?
Well, as a Packers fan, I would love for Newsome to slip, but I don't really see that happening, him slipping to where the Packers pick. And so a lot of mocks love him on the Titans situation, and that's where I would go with him there, because the past 2 seasons, they've lost Logan Ryan, Malcolm Butler, Adoree Jackson. That unit, that secondary unit for the Titans, is by far their weakest link. I mean, their third down defense last year was horrendous, and that comes down a lot to the secondary defense being unable to defend on 3rd and long. And they were 4th in passing yards allowed in the NFL, which, I mean, granted, clearly that's not a great number. So they need a corner here. at 22, and Newsome will most likely be on the board unless another team just falls in love with him. So I see a perfect fit, kind of him going to Nashville and fitting in there. He'd be a number one, number two corner there, but I think he will be able to fit the bill and go up against the likes of Trevor Lawrence for the years to come.
Yeah, I mean, I think, obviously, I think any team would love to have him, especially given, where he's at now in the late first, potentially second round. I personally think that I think a lot of Northwestern fans would love to see him, with the Bears, especially given the loss of Kyle Fuller. I think that, Newsome has the potential to be able to step into his role as a starting corner and, obviously, suffer through some growing pains, but I think that he has that kind of potential and that kind of talent to where picking him, with the 20th overall pick, is not necessarily such a bad decision. So, we'll see where he goes. I think that, a lot of teams are in need of a corner. Secondaries are always kind of moving around and, corners having up and down years all the time. But, I wouldn't be surprised to see Newsome going as early as, I think the earliest he'll realistically go is 20. But I think a lot of teams could use his services.
Yeah, and a sneaky choice here, if he falls a little bit, the Browns at 26 would be a great fit for him because they already have a number one corner in Denzel Ward, who's able to do a lot in coverages. But that second corner spot is wide open right now for the Browns. It's one of their weaknesses. And if Newsome is able to fit into that situation, he'd instantly be slotted in as the number two corner. I think he is a lot better playing out wide, and he'd be able to do that in Cleveland. And the Browns were another team that struggled with defending the pass. They're in the bottom half of the league in pass completion percentage and passing yards allowed. So Newsome would be able to step in, be that number two corner, and I think he'd be very solid in that role. And he would round out a Browns defense that could be sneaky good next year to combine with that dynamic offense that they have already.
Moving on to women's basketball, star Northwestern basketball guard Lindsey Pulliam announced her declaration for the 2021 WNBA draft on April 15th recently. Pulliam averaged 15.5 points for the Cats in 2020 and is projected to be a second-round selection in most mocks. What kind of role do you see Pulliam fitting into, when she enters the WNBA?
Well, look, I know everyone in Evanston loves Lindsey Pulliam, but I hate to burst your bubble. She's not going to be an all-star, top-tier starter in my eyes. I think her scoring capabilities are just a little too inefficient, but instead I think she could find a great role being a bench scorer and a leader for a bench unit. I mean, what she brought to the table for Northwestern was consistent scoring ability. She always put up numbers. She always found a way to do it. Great defensive awareness and great leadership. And I think all three of those things are something that she can bring in a bench role in the WNBA. Excuse me. She won't have the pressure of having starter level minutes in her time coming off the bench. She'll just be able to help sort of run the offense in the bench unit, be able to facilitate a little bit and cause some chaos on defensive end, and overall just be a great leader. She'll be a great 3-and-D piece, I think, but she's not gonna be a star in the WNBA in my eyes.
Listen, I see where you're coming from. I think that, obviously that Pulliam's been an absolute superstar for Northwestern, and on the national level, that's not necessarily going to cut it in terms of being a superstar, at the next level. But I think that Pulliam still has a world of potential to succeed. I think that this year, obviously, it hurt her draft stock a little bit. She had such a phenomenal junior season, being named to the first team, unanimous first team, all Big Ten team, and, being an honorable mention All-American. And she really took a hit this year in terms of shooting percentages, just overall efficiency. But I think that when she enters the league, I think that, I could see her playing that kind of role you're talking about. I could see her being, kind of a spark plug off the bench, someone who gets limited minutes and, can score in bunches and, not someone that a team, should rely on. But at the same time, I could easily see her developing into an all-star. I think she has that kind of capability. I mean, she's been inconsistent this year. We know that, right? Against UCF, she dropped 25 points, on 9 of 16 shooting, to carry the team to a victory. And then next game against Louisville, she makes one field goal. So I think that kind of inconsistency is, still stuff that she has to work out. But I think that she's just got such an incredible jump shot. I think that with a strong support system around her in terms of, not having that sort of pressure to be that star who needs to be taking all the shots in all the games, I think that she can develop into a superstar. But, like you said, definitely not off the bat.
Yeah, I mean, you're right about the silky jump shot. No doubt about it. She has one of the smoothest jumpers around. I think that she will greatly benefit in the WNBA in a smaller role just because she'll have fewer touches. So she won't be having to create shots that may not be very high percentage shots, which she sometimes had to do at Northwestern, which kind of hurt her percentages. I don't know if she has the potential to be a high volume shooter just because when she was a high volume shooter at Northwestern, there were times where let's be honest, it wasn't the greatest thing to watch. We look back at that Louisville game where she really struggled trying to just shoot herself back into the game. And sometimes she just has those nights where nothing will fall. And in the WNBA, that won't really cut it. And yeah, a team that I really like Pulliam ending up at is with the Indiana Fever in the second round. I think that being that the Fever were last in the WNBA in points allowed per game at 89.5, clearly they need a little help on defense. Pulliam can bring that. She was part of the Blizzard scheme, of course, as we know, one of the best defenses in the nation, and she was at the helm of that, really being the leader of the team. So she brings defensive awareness, defensive effort, a ton of effort on the defensive end. So I think she can help shore up a little bit of those Fever's defensive issues. And they were also last in opponent field goal percentage at 47%, and third to last in 3-point percentage defense at 37%. I think overall, just her ability to be a bigger guard, because at the end of the day, I'm thinking what the Fever really struggled with is size. And now that because they're losing Candice Dupree and Natalie Achanwa, they're probably going to go with a forward in the first round, and then Pulliam being a 6-foot guard, she'll be able to step in as a taller shooting guard. And I think that sort of length will greatly benefit the Fever on the defensive and offensive end.
Yeah, and I think that the latest ESPN mock draft has Pulliam going at 16 to the hometown Chicago Sky. So I don't think Northwestern fans would be too upset if that happened. But I guess we'll find out this Thursday.
That we will. And from that wraps up the first episode of NU Takes. Again, I'm Michael Barthelemy.
And I'm Didi.